All right, I think everyone's here to get us started. So let me turn to Everett, quick intro, and then your perspectives on fire or other data issues and things that fit within this kind of ESIP dialogue that we're having today.
Well, thanks, David, and thanks for having me here today. The morning session was great and some great presentations. I wanted to talk a little bit about this group that I'm standing back up again. I'm retired from the Forest Service now. I left at the end of April, and I intended to stay through the end of December, but things happen. So one of the things that I worked on for many years was the Tactical Fire Remote Sensing Advisory Committee, which was a joint effort between myself and Dr. Vince Ambrosia at NASA. We started it back in 2004, and we were looking for ways to better support the fire community with remote sensing capabilities. And when we kind of put the group to bed back in late 2023, early 2024, we had 650 active members in that group, and that kind of grew beyond our wildest imagination. But it was clear to me that there was an appetite to have this kind of forum where you could bring people together, the end user community, the people there that are developing capabilities. I'm a big tent kind of person. I like to bring everybody together, put things on the table, understanding what the issues and needs are, and then working on the technology end of things to help transition technology to support whether it's the fire community, the disasters community. And so this was a very successful effort. And now that I'm retired and I'm no longer really, I don't have to answer to anyone really, I wanted to start this group up again. And Dr. Ambrosia and I talked about this a little bit, and we both agreed that we had kind of outgrown the TIFRSAC name, the Tactical Fire Remote Sensing Advisory Committee, and we wanted to be more broad in our approach to supporting fire, because that's really what the group had grown to over the years. We were going beyond just tactical fire. We were looking at fire detection, pre-fire, post-fire, and looking at remote sensing capabilities and technology applications to help us provide information to the fire community. So I just have a couple slides here, David, just a very few. So as it says here, this is, I'm looking to stand up the follow-on, and I've been working on this for a number of months, and I've had a couple meetings with a number of people. And really the goal of this group is to improve fire detection and monitoring through testing and integration of leading edge geospatial technology. So I mentioned the TIFRSAC. It was established in 2004. It was composed of fire management practitioners, remote sensing scientists, GIS specialists, and industry and university affiliates who collaborated to formulate a tactical fire information gap analysis and prioritize development and transfer technologies related to those gaps. We looked at things like unmanned aircraft. We did a lot of testing with unmanned aircraft over fires to prove that capability and to show that it was useful. We worked with downlinking capabilities, lighter than air aircraft, manned aircraft, and satellite imagery and so forth, and trying to figure out ways to get this information to the fire community. Also working with the fire community to understand what their needs are, what their information needs are. And they're not monolithic. There's different people at the fire that do different things, and they need different bits of information. So that was a real learning curve for someone that hadn't worked in fire before. As it mentions here, it was a collaborative partnership between NASA and the Forest Service, and it grew beyond that to USGS and NOAA, Park Service, BLM, lots of land management agencies, both at the federal level and the state level. And some of the things we did, developing and demonstrating improved airborne platform capabilities, both manned and unmanned, evolving and demonstrating new sensor capabilities for enhanced fire detection and discrimination, demonstrating new data telemetry capabilities for real-time data distribution, developing and demonstrating collaborative decision support capabilities to affect improvements to tactical fire decision support systems. And one of the things that that I really started to get into toward the end, I think this was probably about 2022. I realized that we had this ever increasing fire hose of data available to us from a number of different sources. And I realized that, we're really going to have to leverage AI and machine learning to help us to process this fire hose of data, to produce the products that go to the incident command structure. And so I started pushing this message that, hey, we need to really tap into the AI machine learning. And of course, that's when things were starting to take off in the AI and machine learning world. And so I've also started a side group. It's a federal geospatial AI group. If anyone's interested, just let me know. But so it's a pipeline. You have the acquisition of data, the processing of data, the production of end products, and then delivering those products to the end user. So anything that we can do to improve the speed and efficiency of that pipeline, I think that that's where AI and machine learning is really going to help us. So I worked both the unclassified side of the fence through the Tactical Fire Remote Sensing Advisory Committee and the classified side of the fence through the Thermal Working Group, and I was a co-chair on both of those groups. And we worked with the fire community to make sure that things that we were working on were things that they needed. And they developed a requirements matrix to show where there's gaps and needs. And we worked from that matrix to really start, pushing the envelope on where the technology could take us. So that's just my quick graphic there. These are just some of the focus areas: early fire detection, enhanced fire monitoring, and informed decision making. So that's what we're really trying to do, is we're trying to help the end user with their decision making so that they make good decisions, and where time is of the essence. So the Wildfire Observation Technology Working Group, this is a new group that we're standing up. As I mentioned earlier, TIFRSAC started out looking almost strictly at tactical fire needs when the fire is active and going. And we wanted to broaden beyond that, pre-fire, fire detection, and post-fire, in addition to tactical fire. So in the absence of this group, which it's been gone for almost 2 years now, I've had people come to me time and time again saying, hey, what happened to the TIFRSAC? We need to stand this group up again. So I did some sensing to see if there was really enthusiasm for this. And I got lots of positive feedback saying, yes, we really need a group like this where we can bring people together, figure out what the issues are, what the technology, where the technology is going and how it can help us, and then to transition that technology to the end user community. And a lot of times there's a lot of hand-holding that goes on there so that they understand what it is that you're giving them. You're not just putting it in front of them and say, here, here's this shiny new object that's really going to help you out. And I will say that the fire community, of all the different groups that I've worked with over the years, is the most difficult to work with. And I say that because, and I understand now that, that they have a lot at stake here when they're managing a fire, and decisions can affect lives and property. And so they're very reluctant to adopt new technology that hasn't been thoroughly vetted and tested. And so I get that. And so, I'm really big on the hand-holding part too, where you're working through this process with them, understanding where the gaps and needs are, and then working to fill those gaps and working with them through the whole process. Let's see, where was I here? Gaps in technology, the exchange of needs and opportunities, and the discussion of the art of the possible. This is one of the things where we're educating the end users about, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? We have this new capability or this new sensor that may help you fill some of these gaps. So it's an iterative process. I don't remember who mentioned on the earlier part of the call, but it was the flywheel that, you keep turning the flywheel. And so each time the end users get a little bit more educated and we understand their needs a little bit better. Let's see, front and center in the need space is the need to fully understand the benefits that AI technology can bring to the support pipeline, the collection, processing, production, and product delivery. And the bottom line is to improve on what the TIFRSAC was through the use of targeted working groups and emphasize research to operations, transitioning, and integration of needed geospatial technologies. Making remote sensing of fire, making it all that it can be and must be is a bigger project than any one group can do. That's why I'm a big tent kind of person. This came to me from someone out in California who's worked with people in Texas with, volunteer fire chiefs and so forth. He says that everyone, no matter what level that they're working, whether it's a local fire person or a state or federal, they all deserve the benefits of the technology support, as much as the big fires. So, and the capabilities are available now. This has always been a very frustrating thing for me working inside government is the slow pace of adoption for new. It took years to get unmanned aircraft integrated into fire support. And that's the way the government works, but I think that has to change. Let's see, the available now, real-time surveillance will provide significant benefits to the fire management community. Think intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. That's a military term, but that's basically what we're doing. We're providing actionable information to the end users. Avoid hype, which happens a lot, and this hurts everyone, and especially hurts the community that we're seeking to support. The fire community needs help understanding what can be done without the education about what is presently and near future possible. And again, this is the art of the possible. And the really big thing in standing up a group like this is that I need to have the support of the federal fire community. Without their support and interest, that's the end user, that's the client that we're trying to serve and to help with their needs. So without their engagement and interest, it's really hard to do this. So it's a two-way kind of thing here. And so if anyone is interested in, signing up for at least getting their name out there for future events for the Wildfire Observation Technology Working Group, there's a little code there, or this presentation is online. You can pull the active link there. But in the middle photo there, that's Dr. Vince Ambrosia. He and I were the co-chair for 19 years together on this. And so we're both retired now, but he's actively supporting me and standing up this new group. And we both feel very strongly that this is a really needed forum to help support the fire community. So I think I'll leave that up there just for a minute if anyone wants to grab the QR code there. But David, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Everett. So again, the theme here is really how to take a lot of these projects and pilots and figure out, what are those actions that need to take place. Everett's proposed to reconstitute and recharter this group, which at the needs of the community. It is the early stage, so I think Everett and Vince would also be welcome to hear from the stakeholders here and across ESIP and other organizations as to how they can reformulate this in the best way. So it's not too late to make changes because it's just restarting. Also, we're going to hear from Claire in a minute. I'd love to hear how that might connect with the community that Claire and their group has started. Bandana and others are part of other societies and groups, all who have working groups and clusters and things. And we don't necessarily need to recreate, but we need to figure out where to merge and not to have just more white papers or more conferences or more meetings just for the sake of it, but which ones are really going to turn into useful, meaningful ways forward. And particularly, and even I'll challenge Everett here, today we think the firefighter in the community is the best client. 5 years from now, the roles of different players may be entirely different.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It may be a firefighter and a health worker or a natural resource person, transportation official, a utility company. They're all starting to mix. And AI is going to make that really, I think, possible. But how do we do that? And that's why even Rob's here from the space weather, we always hear about, the effects on the power grid. Well, the fires have effect on power grid. And so do a lot of other things on transportation and logistics. So for the first time, we may have the right tools. So I'd like to invite Claire to talk about what's going on with their effort Claire comes out of uh, building these collaborations around data, but a unique combination of facilities that in University of San Diego, supported by National Science Foundation, more recently by NIST, and again, agencies who have come forward who, before, fire was Forest Service, weather was Weather Service. Now we're finding we've got to collaborate in new ways. So Claire, let's hear from you and your thoughts and anything provocative to help us move this forward, please.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you, Everett, for setting a great stage and all of the work that you've done. I think it tails into what I can share a bit around our work with the Wildfire Science and Technology Commons. This is an initiative that is funded through NIST and several other collaborators at the Societal Computing and Innovation Lab, which is hosted at UC San Diego. So a little bit of background for where we got here. For the past 10 years plus, our team at UC San Diego has been working with frontline practitioners on what tools do they need in order to make smart decisions on the front lines during an active fire. So some of you might have heard of the Wi-Fi group. This is where FireMap, BurnPro 3D, and several other tools have been generated out of. And we've understood for a while now that there is a challenge around creating these solutions. We have fragmented access to data and models, shared standards and practices is just disparate and hard to pull together, especially from different, I would say, ages of the product too. There's also a barrier to adopting these new technologies, especially for our practitioners, but also interoperability between our own solutions. So the Wildfire Commons has been charged with this opportunity to really be a unifier within the community. There's a couple of different unifiers that I'll talk about that are more on a feature set side that we're able to offer this group and all community members interested in the wildland fire landscape. But I do want to also emphasize that this is a community-driven commons. We've had great conversations with working groups, which we had reports come out of at the end of December. We have pathfinders that are expressing how user communities are utilizing the commons. We have several case study communities that are helping us focus on specific tech challenges related to wildfire mapping, modeling, and data. And I'll talk about one here in a moment. We have data challenges that enable students and early workforce professionals to really get hands-on with data and products. And again, I'll highlight one that we're launching tomorrow. And then community forums to be able to have good conversations about where is the state of things today and where do we move it forward. So within the Wildfire Commons, we have a couple of different feature sets that I'm going to just kind of quickly talk through. The expert network tool, the ability to kind of canvas out your innovation within the Wildfire Commons through a FireForge platform, and a community marketplace, which we launched just back in December, that really enables us to highlight the available products, how they're being utilized, how they were developed, and really build that trust for a solution that is available to the community and kind of demystify the black box. So starting with the expert network, this is a space where we can come in and look at colleagues within the wildland fire and WUI space. So being able to illustrate who you are as an individual, you can also create a profile that lists your great works that you've been leading. So it's really an enabler that we've found supporting interconnections between all the different expertise that we have. The FireForge platform is really to kind of tackle this challenge that we all run into with our workflows. We do Google searches, leading to bookmarks. We're taking great notes in today's meeting, but trying to keep those compiled in a way that makes sense for an actionable step, asking colleagues for their files, and then attending, of course, conferences that might lead to the unfortunate QR code link not working. So this is a lot of self-managed processes that eventually lead us to our output of, let's analyze trees in a 3D space, even in a virtual reality space, to help practitioners identify what fuels are on the ground and which ones they need to plan out for an RX burn, for example. But a lot of work has to happen in order to get there, so I don't want to understate that. So FireForge isn't meant to replace, it's meant to enable, and really the space where we can have discovery through a good community catalog of open data products, even listing our AI models that we might start using within this community. We have a metadata entry space for those models. Being able to collect them in a single workspace, invite our great collaborators to access and join, tap into some compute that our center makes available, and then be able to store the product for reproducibility and ease of access for future analysis. So within this whole platform, it's really meant to be a centralized ecosystem for innovators, that blank canvas where you can plug and play as you go along. And it's supported through the National Data Platform, which is funded through NSF. And how do we get people to utilize it with their use cases in mind? So I want to highlight two things that are happening that are utilizing the Wildfire Commons in this FireForge space. We have a shrub-wise data challenge because when we have our satellite data and great views of the world, typically we get blocked by our canopies and in more of our shrub-dense ecosystems, it's really important to know what's on the ground, especially for practitioners. So we're having a data challenge for students, great opportunity for students, where we can start building out models that account for these shrubs. And you can learn a little bit more about this on wildfirecommons.org. And then also tomorrow we will have a launch webinar, which will be recorded. So feel free to capture that and share it out to any students or early workforce that might be interested. But the goal here is to build a machine learning pipeline that accurately characterizes the shrub ecosystems with the data and products that we have available for us today. We also have a digital twin case study that we're launching in collaboration with the google.org AI Collaborative. So this is where we're going to be bringing together members of the community to think about digital twins as what can we shape on a back end to support additional digital twins in the future. So we're going to have a workshop that will be coming up in March. And if you're interested in this work and participating in it, especially if you're leading a digital twin work yourself, encourage you to reach out to our team and let us know, and we'll connect you further. So that's a little bit into the space of how do we take action and innovation all together. But what about the tools that have been developed that we want to highlight within this community? This is where we have a marketplace that was recently launched. The goal here is to have these products listed in an ecosystem where we have really great documentation of how they were set up and how they're maintained. We have community tagging that's allowing us to understand the use within these different product types. And we're also connecting back into that FireForge experience. So I can take some data sets that I receive from Synoptic in their open access program, understand how to launch an executable with a script that's been built, and actually go in and look at that data. And the data that's on the Wildfire Commons today from Synoptic is actually tied to the beginning of the Palisades fire. So we're able to look at the weather and the increase during the stations that we're observing the weather at that time and see how our wind and trajectory took effect into building and scaling that fire. So being able to use the marketplace, we encourage folks to register, especially if you're authors or owners of these products. We'd love to have you list these within the Wildfire Commons and then recommend them for the marketplace itself. And this has, again, been a big thank you to all of our partners and collaborators that have been helping us with working group reports, being pathfinders, and just being able to guide us for how do we grow and develop the commons. And we're always looking for additional collaborations as well. And I would be remiss not to highlight the team too, small but mighty, and here to also receive all of the feedback that you have on how it can be improved to meet your needs within the community. And with that, I'll say thank you and happy to open it up for any discussions that come up.
Thank you, Claire. Does anyone have any questions for Claire or even for Everett from the previous? Otherwise, I was going to actually put Shayna Solis on the spot because I was thinking she could share with Claire and the others what you mentioned this morning about both conversational AI, but I was also thinking input to the forge of the after action report that you based one of your studies on. Shayna, would you care to comment a little bit on those?
Yeah, absolutely. And Claire, actually, as you were talking, I was thinking that the tool that we've developed would potentially be a great way to facilitate searching within the Commons, because as you mentioned, there's so much information out there. It can be very difficult to find and keep track of. And this is a conversational approach to search. So the example that I gave earlier in my talk was actually taking the after action reports. We've modeled various different fires using game engine technology, which I know the Wildfire Lab also has done some work, and I've actually demoed to your group in the past, and I know okay. So what we've done is we've kind of created a companion using conversational AI to actually bring the reports and other documentation alongside the visual component. So it can actually serve as almost like a SME looking over your shoulder with you so that you can ask questions about everything from sort of basic features of what you're looking at, what are the yellow lines? In this case, what I was showing is they represent dozer and hand lines that were put in for containment, and all the way up through what are the data sources, so full transparency to support open science and replicability. Sorry, I have a cold. So. And then in terms of also AI, then also being able to really provide full transparency into what are the sources of the information, the provenance of the data itself, which I'm sure you agree is, very, very important as we incorporate more AI and ML into these workflows. Is that kind of what you had in mind, David?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And for those who didn't see the sessions, because we had parallel disaster and hazard AI, I understand those videos will be available, and maybe we can get AI to merge them into some kind of, where the collaboration space really is. So thanks. Before we move to Marge, I just wanted to ask Maggie, because she was in that disaster session, if she had any reflections from not just fire, but maybe multi-hazard, maybe the data quality issue, some things that were discussed this morning that maybe you want to share with the group now that could be relevant.
Sure. Yeah. We had a really great discussion, and I wanted to I think Claire and Bonina are both here in this session. They presented some really great information, and Bonina actually had some really great and interesting things to say about the sort of merging the emerging technology of AI with our traditional means of doing data analysis, and what are sort of the pitfalls and the strengths of both of those. So I think that was a really great discussion. And Claire told us about the Wildfire Commons and some of the tools that are being used with their group. But I wonder if I can lean on Bandana a little bit to just maybe summarize a couple of the points that she made, because one of the things that we're concentrating on, at least in the disaster lifecycle cluster, is the whole idea of trusted data. And I think that one of the issues that comes up perhaps with using AI is that whole trusted portion of, is this reliable? Is it of good quality, et cetera? So Bandana, can I lean on you to chat about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure, no problem. And I think just hopefully this time it will allow me to share only one slide I want to share, not all of them. So that basically would be the talking point to, come on, where is my share? To, which one? There, does it show the one?
I do
Can you
encourage
see,
people to use the chat to
you see the
exchange additional
screen?
questions or contacts.
David, are you able to
Yeah.
share? Okay, let me see if you're able to see the. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
So basically, these are the 3 talking points, and I know we all are aware of AI and we are marching ahead. And it was not a new thing in the 1980s and 90s. NASA has used them, but of course, with a lot of data and computational power, we are moving on. But I wanted to take a step back and think about the issues that have always remained. One is understanding the multiscalar nature of the data, the spatiotemporal variability in the data sets that we obtain from different sources, especially in the imagery world, we have a spectral component to it. So the uncertainties associated with fusion of these data sets has to be captured and relayed back to the stakeholders on the other end. That is something, a continuing problem, and just because we use AI, that is not going away. Probably it is much more serious now than it was before because AI development inherently becomes a black boxy implementation. Even with neural networks that we use, not necessarily we know the weighting that happens behind the screen and why we are using so many neurons. So that is one aspect. So in the Geo AI world, we have to be careful. Then the moment we bring in the Gen AI component, the moment we introduce any kind of noise into the data set, will modify the quality of the output from those models. And I used that example, and I'm going to use the same example and 2 examples. One is there was a recent report that was looking at, especially with adversarial threats and cybersecurity concern perspective, one image had a very tiny noise introduced that was an image of a panda that was introduced that we can't see with naked eye, but the neural network basically categorized the panda as a bison. Imagine in a fire context, it is going to reduce my risk in the fire mapping because there was some noise introduced in my data, whether it is in the training data or in the main data stream, can be problematic downstream, especially living in the energy sector where everything is now automated. That can have serious consequence if the grid fails. There is power outages and downstream impacts from service continuity. So that is another one example. Then when we are using GeoAI or Gen AI, doesn't matter, we do need large amount of data sets for training purposes. But if my training data has sampling error, for instance, suppose the model is, one model is giving me an accuracy of 99.8 and the other one is giving 97.5, but one model has training data where the dogs are classified as cats, that is problematic, and that means that is a human error. So we have to intervene. So human in the loop is needed in both contexts. So I try to go back to that. Then the data provenance and quality aspect. So AI can make life easier. That is, there is no doubt about it. At the same time, the perpetual issues of quality, the outcomes, reliability, and relevance, can they be reproduced by the stakeholders at the other end, need to be addressed, because otherwise the products that we give, the emergency managers will rely on us because they are hoping the experts know better. But if we do not assess the issues, the quality of the outcomes, then it is not going to be an action-oriented product that can easily be used for decision-making purposes, and that is going to be fatal. And one of the areas that some of the things based on what we are talking about. There are opportunities. Yes, we need open data and open science, but I want to go back to ask the question. The moment we talk about open data, is it really a viable option, especially when we think about Planet Labs and Maxar that are producing the data and that is how they generate their income? Can they give us the open data? Is it really a possibility? If it is from private sector, then it may not be the case. The accuracy, then trustworthy aspect, and ethical, reliable outcomes from those data. Then we need some standards and protocols for data and models. The way we have OGC, the way we have positional accuracy standards coming out from the American Society for Photogrammetry and Remote Sensing, we need some standards and protocols with regard to the use of data for AI model creation, as well as use of the AI models. Otherwise, it is going to be just like a wild, wild west situation. We also need to be human-centric solutions. The problems are there. Yes, the moment we think about fire mapping, but the fire mapping for California is not going to be the same for the Southeast region where it is a humid environment. So the dry versus humid. So problem-based solution, but the place-based implementation has to be done. It takes into account the localized aspects there. Some of the future directions that comes to mind, and also talking to David, is that we need to invest in community engagement to understand what are they looking for, not just telling them, yes, we created all these using AI and everybody is gung-ho and sold on it. No, we need to have a public-private partnership if we want open data access, and again, some standards and protocols. This is the last part I think we need. Increase awareness. AI is built on statistics. It's not a panacea for all the problem, and it is not going to capture the processes unless I understand the processes and how they interact with each other when we think about any of the disasters here. So the awareness has to be there. Probably we can think about creating a consortium that leverages all the working groups that have been mentioned to basically use the expertise that already exists to build out some of these awareness aspects. And then we need to bridge the gap between science and technology and policy. If we don't have protocols, it's not going to work. It's just going to be used anyway, whoever wants it. Sorry for throwing water on the AI. Everybody's going, I'm going backward. I'm sorry.
Bandana, can I ask a question? Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Yes, please.
Sorry, I'm on Market Street, San Francisco. Sorry for all the background noise. I was just commenting in the chat, but I think there's some good news here on metadata and AI, which is that AI makes it much easier to generate high-quality metadata if you're willing. And
Yes.
it gives immediate return of value. And so some of the experiments I just shared, like you get at least 10% accuracy boost on English to SQL when you have column level metadata. So that's a pretty good incentive for anybody to add the column level metadata. So now we have incentive, which we used to have the club of the government saying we had to do it, but we didn't have, as scientists anyway, as much incentive to do it. But the super hard part, it came up earlier this morning, but everybody's data pipelines, if you start looking at them nowadays, they've got multiple sensors, multiple modalities at different scales, all getting, mixed dip. Somebody this morning called it our data cocktail, which is both intoxicating and difficult to generate metadata for. So I'm curious your thoughts, having wrestled with some of this, on
I agree with it.
how we leverage what we know already about metadata, but how we kind of get that into the AI metadata future, including with data products.
Yeah, I think my answer is probably not going to be 100%, and Guy has his hands up and he probably can share some. We do need to have the metadata, but when I said increasing awareness, we probably have to make it a mandatory requirement. When we are using different sensors and different modalities for the data sets, the metadata has to be there, and the user need to understand what it is being used for. Not just training CNN on a bunch of data because I have them as training data, but is there a purpose behind using data sets? If you are I'll go to one example that David funded one of the project with Guy and Maggie. We had a project for flood risk modeling globally that is active, and on a daily basis we rely on different imagery, but we try out with the coarse resolution imagery, then we go down to the fine resolution imagery depending upon their usage to understand what is happening locally. So some of those information is needed for us to understand the value proposition of these data sets, not just having a data cocktail, unless I really need those data sets, because it should not be used as a filler because there is a missing data and my neural net requires 80% training data, therefore I need it. So I think understanding that use case is needed. That means educating the users of and the developers of AI models. Students nowadays, everybody wants to just call the PyTorch library and do it, but they have no understanding what that imagery is supposed to be used for and if that is supposed to be the imagery for that specific problem space. So metadata creation, as you said, is nobody likes to do it, but we probably have to do it. We also need to work on creating some taxonomy as we move forward for the use of AI, how they should be used so people have a better understanding of it, not just that I have open data, therefore I can just create it. That's how I think of it.
Okay.
Thanks. And
Let's go to Guy, and then I'd like to ask that question about, there's a lot of things that Vandana and others are starting to suggest. We need to also start moving to who's actually going to do this. So Guy, you had some thoughts and input.
Yeah. So I want to say something about this trusted data is really getting important, because I don't know if I sent somebody a request to share screen. Maybe it's you, David, if you can allow. I don't know why. Okay, thank you.
Should be able to share it yourself.
So I just finished this project with ESA, so I think it's okay to share some of it.
Hey, Google, set an alarm for 2:25 p.m.
So let's say you have a satellite image that we'll use. We have, at my company, we have, or in all the projects I always did, is like you take a satellite image, you process it into a map, like on the upper right here. You show floods, you may show clouds, you may show whatever you want. Nowadays, you can run those algorithms in a Docker, proprietary or not, open source, but you run it somewhere on a cloud system. Maybe it's Azure, maybe it's Google. Actually, nobody ever cares anymore. You just say you've run it on the cloud. Nobody asks a question where, when, or what, unless they really need to comply with something. So reinsurance will have requirements, maybe because of ESG, maybe because of something else, maybe because of legal. But they're starting to question whether the original image, it was actually Gen AI generated or actually came from a satellite. If it came from a satellite, what satellite? Was it free data? Was it like payable? Because they have these terms and conditions on their contracts, but they don't know anymore if they're getting fooled by people. Because it's very easy nowadays to just generate any map. So we thought about this, and we thought, what if you add a product certificate to that, but in an IT terms? So when you run an algorithm, you can attach a code snippet that will generate a hash key of your algorithm. So a unique identity of an IT code that will make it almost impossible to fake that key or to hack that key. So if they see that, and then you have a platform that they can drag and drop that image, that generates the same key. So it's like a proof that you use your algorithm with that image that you say, so you can give them these product informations with an IT almost authenticity thing that they can be sure that you generated what their contract was saying. So you can include things like, what was the version of your algorithm you ran? Maybe, in this case, blah, blah, version 1 was actually the algorithm specified in their contracts. Now, when they have that hash key and they have that platform where they drag and drop the map, they get the same information. So they can be almost 100% sure that you actually executed what you said on the contract. And I'm not saying this is perfect. This is by no means perfect, because actually, let's be honest, with us, they didn't go in contract. So they say it's too complicated still. It needs to be simplified. But I think it's the first step of doing something that will tell a client or an end user, this is kind of trustworthy data now. I just wanted to highlight that maybe we should all work together towards what this product certificate should actually be, and incorporating AI as well. I think that would be really something. I stop here. I just wanted to highlight something we did as a first step in a research project. So I think we now need to feed it with what Banana was saying, meta models of AI, simplify the structure of it. But I think that would be a first step towards people actually trusting AI and EO and whatever. Thank you.
Great suggestion, totally actionable. I saw that there were thumbs up from Ryan and Rob and Mike. Again, just before I go to turn to March, Rob or Ryan, any input you'd like to provide or feedback?
You can go to Ryan. Would you like to go first?
Rob, you got the screen. You might as well go for it.
Hi, folks. I'm NOAA's director for AI, Center for AI. Maybe just a real quick backdrop. This is lovely and wonderful. My role is a few things, kind of like everybody's here, to understand all the AI going on at NOAA and help to build communities of practice, spread the word. We see AI kind of in three ways: human first, human centered. That's the first one. Integrated into our human validated workflows, and then using it for ourselves to get things done, and then doing things with our information services so that others, like this community, can do things for wildfire, flood inundation community can do things for their work, et cetera. So I'd love to see what I'm seeing. What I'm seeing here. Maybe a couple just comments. That previous chart that was just shown looked like a data nutrition or a data card, and totally just wanted to give thumbs up on any approaches you can take with trust at the center to characterize the data, the information services around it, and any of the models that are starting to look like useful benchmarks, I think will be extremely valuable. We're seeing that everywhere. I mean, it's not a big surprise to say this. We're seeing that in AI for weather forecasting and prediction, for computer vision under the ocean, everywhere. And then maybe I can draw your attention to a couple. If I have the floor, can I draw your attention to a couple things, just in case it's not something already super familiar to your community? I should say, as David mentioned in the beginning, my scientific expertise is space weather. So I'm not going to tell you how to do anything related to fire weather. I'm going to tell you I'm excited about it because I live in the West. I live in fire country. I got a chance to fund some efforts within NOAA that are pulling from the lessons learned of the very robust fire weather program at NOAA to capture lessons learned as Jupyter notebooks for others to learn about NOAA's data from. That's something you can find about on our website, NOAA.gov AI. So a couple things I was thinking about, just maybe to throw out there for you, just in case you don't already know about these things. We're looking at things like, if I just go through the stack, and I heard some of these things already mentioned, so I'll just reinforce them, I guess, on sort of optimizing discovery, things like schema.org. I want to make sure that when someone asks a chatbot we had no influence on, and someone's asking a question relevant to a public service, something the public paid for, that we have authoritative data on, I want to make sure the provenance and the data integrity casts all the way through to that third-party tool. And they do too, probably if they're trying to do a great job. So schema.org comes to mind. On APIs, I already heard OGC, I think, but OGC API, maybe that's relevant to your community here. You decide. On formats, we're looking at the classical and historical and somebody mentioned data pipelines, so I'll mention it in this vein. The classical and historical HDFs and NetCDFs, and there's buffer in the satellite world. There's a lot, right, of kind of those heritage archival formats. And we're looking at how do we move towards enabling cloud native, Czar, GeoParquet, et cetera. Probably GeoParquet is interesting to your community. And then optimizing kind of just the discovery of our information. I did already mention schema.org. And then the last one I didn't hear yet, so I was kind of curious. I want to pose a question. how involved is this community here? How involved do you feel you already are in pressing the emerging standards around data formats that are designed for machine learning pipelines? Because I've seen schema.org extensions in Croissant, and I've seen some geospatial work going on. And I'll leave it with two things that maybe are a value when you build you breaking down your silos and building your community. ESIP, thank you, ESIP. Hey, Patty, and others, has lots of collaboration clusters. One of them is the data readiness cluster. That one is focused on AI-ready data standards development with the community and tools. So if there's something you would like to do, I'm involved in that one. Douglas Rao is the lead for that one. If you're interested in maybe you've already interacted with him, and if you're interested in interacting more, I just want to plant that seed, data readiness cluster. And then I think one last seed I was maybe thinking of planting. NCAR, I think they recently had a workshop report called Innovations, Open Science. It's all about geospace or geoscience data commons. I didn't know if that was familiar to your community already. That I could post that link or put it in your chat and in your notes. So maybe if it makes sense, I'll put a couple of these things in the notes, David. Is that helpful? Is anything anybody wants to?
That's great. Again, again, awareness. You heard from Claire. You've heard, you missed some of the talks this morning, but some of the people are here. There's communities within different parallel areas, within different data enterprises that are, in some cases duplicating, and I think part of this is to find out where those good practices are, where those gaps exist. Who can take that up? Is it an ESIP group? Is it a CIOS group? Is it some other different data? I mean, getting to that human-centered approach, we need to figure out where's all that social science data, and that trust is a social issue, it's a psychological issue, it's a human issue, and when we talk only of geophysical, we miss all that human factor. And so Everett, I know, talked about, the Forest Service has a human factor group, and NOAA certainly does have behavioral, and increasingly so. But it's also increasingly shifting to a community-based, as the federal service is struggling to figure out it can't be everywhere. This dovetails well to Marge, so I want to jump over to Marge now. I know she's got a few specific suggestions, and she comes out of, she can introduce herself, but certainly the NASA and the digital twins and the data, the technology, interface to private sector and academia, and the Glenn Taylor Institute experience, and the OGC experience, and recently, launching Lunette AI and trying to also figure out where they can help build some bridges. So Marge?
Great. Thank you, David. And thank you to everyone for the previous presentations and this latest conversation. It's a very nice segue into what I'm going to present, which is pulling out a bit from fires per se and looking at risk analytics at scale overall, specifically to a panel meeting that we had and a paper we wrote on this topic. So I'm going to share my slides, and I am going to turn off my camera while I'm doing this, just to be sure I have reasonable bandwidth, if I can even do that. I'm not sure I can. All right. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
David, can you see my slides?
Yes, but you're not in presentation mode.
All right, is that better?
Yeah, that's great.
Great. Okay.
And of course, I'll encourage everyone to continue some parallel discussions and questions in the chat, because we'll capture all that and they'll be shared. And after Marge's talk, loop back to how some of the things we've discussed and some of the things she's going to introduce here turn into actions and roles, either for an ESIP group or cluster, as Rob indicated. And then I know Ryan, I think, had some comments as well, and a few other people. So go ahead, Marge.
Okay, great. We are Lunate AI. This, as David mentioned, this is a new organization, a company that Nadine Alame and I started in 2025. As David mentioned earlier, most people that have been in this arena for any time at all have at least one degree of separation with Nadine, in fact know her well. She and I both met a number of years ago. I won't say how many, at NASA. I remained at NASA for about 25 years, working on different missions, and then also with David, as David mentioned, with the Applied Sciences program, and for a number of years in the ESTO program, and was the deputy for the AIST division of the Earth Science and Technology Office program from NASA. Nadine, though, went on to Northrop Grumman and FAA, and then was the CEO of OGC. And the inaugural executive director of Taylor Geospatial Institute, and then the two of us started this company, Lunate AI. And I'll just give you a quick, brief background on what we're concentrating on within the company, and then move on. So we're really working on in three areas. One is building consortiums, identifying opportunities and building these consortiums for large bids that, can't be done by one organization. We've heard a bit about this already today, and that there are things that we need to do as a community that probably can't be done by one organization. And just in this latest conversation, building in trust, making sure that we have that across all of our risk analytics and models and stuff. This is probably going to be, this would be a community and consortium type effort, not a one organization effort. The other thing we're concentrating on is advising on geospatial strategies, doing things like workflow automation and efficiency for government, industry, and academia. And then the last is adoption acceleration, which is training at the executive level down to staff levels, and then value add of new capabilities and use case development and things like that. So that's mainly what we're concentrating in our on in this company. I'm going to skip by this. This is kind of what I just went over. It's in the slide, so if you want to, read it, you can access the slides from the ESIP site. But in September, we had a session at the New York Climate Week conference, and we had three panel meetings. And I'm sorry that I didn't notice Rob Carroll, whether Rob Carroll got back on this afternoon. He was here this morning and presented, but he was part of one of our panels at the New York Climate Week. So anyway, we had this 3-panel session at New York Climate Week titled Bridging Earth Observations and Risk Analytics at Scale. The breakdown of the 3 panels were, breaking down the barriers, why EO isn't yet fueling risk analytics at scale, then scaling risk analytics with AI and next gen, and then mobilizing the ecosystem. And so this kind of became a pivotal session. The discussions brought together data providers, users, developers, and investors to examine what's working, identify persistent gaps, and explore where joint investment can have the greatest impact. What began as a focused exchange on EO risk analytics and gaps quickly evolved into a broader dialogue on the state and promise of the geospatial ecosystem and its data, technologies, and communities. So that's kind of where we ended up discussing throughout the sessions. And so we have, as a community, made tremendous progress in satellite capabilities. However, there still is this divide between the upstream investment in Earth observation infrastructure and the downstream adoption in analytics, and that divide remains somewhat wide. Again, we're making a lot of progress, but there's a lot of focus on getting the data and investment in that. There is not as much investment focus on using the data. So this was, we saw as a challenge for Earth observations. So again, this has been mentioned a few times already this morning. This is, a growing landscape, both in Earth observations and AI. We have, as noted here, grown by nearly 200 satellites. 44 more countries are planning launches or already launching. We've got 1,373 new satellites. That was a number that surprised me a little bit in September. And 130, plus terabytes of daily data coming just from the missions like NISAR, Sentinel, Landsat, and PlanetScope. So we're headed for kind of an avalanche of data. And this offers us huge potential to do a lot with that data, make better decisions, understand our overall systems that much better. However, again, we still have this gap between applied and getting the data. So the key adoption and scaling barriers that came out of this session in New York were highlighted as persistent and things actually that we've been talking about for a number of years. As a matter of fact, Kevin Bullock from Development Seed was on one of the panels, and he said, I hope I'm not discussing these things again in, a decade. And some of us laughed that have been around this arena for more than a decade, and that we've been discussing metadata and the improvement of and trust and things like that for well over a decade now. So, but what came out, what really came out was the archaic licensing frameworks, unclear business value proposition, lack of AI-ready data, workforce skill gaps, and data silos and interoperability are core areas that we as a community need to address. And then, shifting the perception requires work in all of these areas, turning this abundance of EO data into actionable risk insights remains elusive and constrained and fragmented. Fragmented infrastructures. We have gaps in skills and unclear business models. So we need to address all of those items. So the opportunities, again, in those areas I just talked about, AI readiness, the effort, is still required. Again, something that we've heard about a couple times this morning already. We need to address calibration, harmonization, metadata, and fusion issues behind the scenes. We're getting better, but with the amount of data that we're going to have access to, AI readiness really is a key component of being able to improve our models and our pipelines for risk, whether it be fire or any other risks at scale. Expanding the open data resources, we could unlock substantial value across industries such as building and parcel data sets. Again, this is, the open data, expanding the open data resources was a big part of the conversation. Down at the last notice is licensing. These two things work together somewhat, and there's great concern, and Vandana brought this up, that how much of the open data resources, or how much of these resources that will become available will be open data if we're getting many of them from industry, and how do we overcome that as a community? Collaborative piloting. Open collaborative approaches are needed for climate and risk modeling, the transparent processes, public benchmarking. And one of the examples of this was the weather forecasting domain has really made advances in this area. Weather forecasting is advanced as far as the data and the information we get from that. And so how can other domains follow suit in what they did? But then also, how do we do collaborative piloting across domains and silos? For example, we're talking about fire today. How does fire expand into weather and extreme storms that then cause mudslides and unstable ground and things like that? So these are, this type of collaborative piloting is an area that, again, was discussed as something that the community really needs to work together on. And then in interdisciplinary academic programs, this is also a critical area. Initiatives like Clark University, their School on Climate, Environment, and Society, and Seasons, NASA's Seasons programs that combine Earth observation and socioeconomic data, demonstrate how interdisciplinary approaches can better assess vulnerability and societal change and resilience. So greater investment in joint industry, government, academia, AI centers could accelerate these advances. So, and this is an area in which, we might look towards academia to really push these interdisciplinary academic programs. I mean, sometimes you can find them in, am I out of slide presentation mode?
David,
did that?
You're in it. You just skipped ahead somehow.
I have been having a few technical problems, so sorry about that.
Okay.
So am I back? Can everybody see back where we were? The slide?
We're on the opportunity slide.
Yeah, okay. So the interdisciplinary academic programs, and then licensing, and this was a big conversation too. There was a lot of talk about how the licensing frameworks are still really from the 90s, and that they have not changed much, and especially trying to work with private industry, with Planet, for example, and the licenses that they're still using are old, and there doesn't seem to be much change or advancement in those in the licensing contracts. And so there was a lot of talk about this, how they're fragmented, they're different across the industry. You can't count on any consistency, really, even within one organization. Maxar has very different contracts with different stipulations for different users. They restrict modeling, and they impede secondary markets and slow broader industry progress. And so there was a lot of interest in the community coming together to work on upgrading these licenses, creating some kind of standards and consistency, and in doing so, going back to helping with in that area with the open data capabilities and resources. So again, this is a little bit more about the outdated licensing. It really was, a big part of some of the conversations. And then the geospatial and AI proposition. This is really, what came out is, where do we go from here? So we've identified what the gaps are, but how do we address these things? And this is, one of the big things was clearly state in business terms, not technical jargon. There was a lot of chatter about, you can only say geospatial so many times before people's eyes glaze over, and it really is necessary to start to discuss the value proposition in business terms, not scientific terms, because it doesn't, unless you're in the science domain, it doesn't convert well to the general public. And then demonstrable return on investment, really be able to show, what that is. There is, it can be very costly to have the hardware, develop the software, bring these things. We've heard actually quite a bit this morning, the fire brigades and workers, and all of them are loath to implement something new. One, because they know that they know that they really need to be able to trust it, but also it's an expense to them, and it's going to take away from something else that they really need. So we need to be able to really show them, yes, there's an expense, but this is going to be your return on investment. And how do we do that? Again, community effort. And then showing how AI can transform Earth observations, and engaging investors helps shape sustainable business models. Engaging investors, it introduces valuable perspectives and helps shape sustainable business models. So, this is an area that we haven't done, as a community, haven't done a lot of. It might be of great value to pursue more investor interest. But again, having to do that with business value, return on investment, and showing how AI can transform Earth observation capabilities, not just say it can, but actually show that. And again, there are certain areas that have done that a little bit better than others. Weather being one of them. So where to focus our efforts? We've kind of just been through this. AI-ready data, expand access, launch pilots, support long-term programs, bridge communication gap, and advocate for a GIO role. So this is, we have discussed a bit. We do truly need the data to be AI-ready, to be able to show return on investment and what the business value is. So some work needs to be done there, expanding access to the public domain, especially for startups. There are a lot of startups that, have a hard time accessing data. They don't necessarily know where it is, or it's expensive. They're looking to private industry for it. And so this is another area that, making sure that startups, like many of the startups here today, have access to the data they need so that they can develop new capabilities for all that benefit all of us. Launching pilots. This is investing in the harmonization and infrastructure and launching collaborative pilots, again, community efforts. And then supporting long-term programs. This is another area that there was a lot of conversation around. There are a lot of short-term projects, 1-year grants, 2-3-year grants, but then it ends, and there's no path or avenue to, or vehicle to transition that work to the community of interest. And so, how do we do longer term projects so that maybe the 4th and 5th year of a grant or 3rd and 4th year are within that domain? And this is actually an area that David in Applied Sciences had done some work in the past, where the end of the grant was working within the domain area itself to try and transition development work to the users themselves. And then bridging the communication gap, again, simplifying the language and clarifying what we're talking about, trying not to talk in such scientific terms, but bringing more business terms into how we're sharing our message. And then advocating for a GIO role. This is something that came up also. A lot of organizations have a chief data officer, or they have an IT as a CTO or something like that. But these are generally people that are managing the hardware, software, and data of a private organization. It could also be academia or government, but a lot of this is in industry where we might be looking for funding or looking to push our capabilities, our geospatial AI capabilities, models, pipelines, architectures too. But they don't have anybody at a senior level that necessarily understands geospatial and the value it brings. And so we have actually a paper that we're about to publish on how every organization should have a chief geospatial officer. So that ought to rattle some cages when that comes out. But this is another area that was talked about, that there's a lack of understanding within industry, and even in some areas of government and academia. Certainly government that doesn't generally work with Earth observation and geospatial data, that at the higher levels where decision is made on what investments to make, there is very little understanding of how bringing these capabilities into their organizations will bring value. So just a thanks to all of the people that were on our panels at New York Climate Week. And that's it. Like I said, there is a paper on bridging the EO and risk analytics at scale on our website at lunateai.com. If you want to access it there, you can get it there, or ping me, if you're interested in it. But but that was the outcome of that panel meeting. And so I mean, a lot of what Bandana was just talking about, all of those pieces kind of fit into these bigger pieces. If we're working on metadata and taxonomies and things like that, we need to work on them as a community and push that information out, make the public more aware of what we're doing, and work as within consortiums and as a community to help people better understand the value proposition of using Earth observations and scientific data within our risk analytics modeling. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Marge.
Yeah.
So we only have a few more minutes. I think bringing up a lot of the issues and the opportunities and the actions. I think the challenge that we need to follow up after this as the dialogue continues here, maybe some things for the next, face-to-face meeting or whatever, is like, what are those specific things we need to do beyond, identifying the problems and writing more papers? I think, I'm hoping Everett and the group here takes away the fact that he's, creating yet another group, reconstituting. Maybe there's some roles. Maybe he's rethinking the charter of that group and what they could do in terms of the metadata or some of these other attributes. We heard from Claire, and I think there's been some side chat about, hey, I need to get my stuff into your commons, and your commons can benefit from these tools. So I think we need to make sure those actionable steps of decision supports and augmenting, excuse me, Claire's efforts. An example of what Marge was just talking about, was funded several years by NSF and then NIST. But what's the sustainable approach? If that's a good practice, where does it land? Where does it go? I want to make sure that we find an avenue to follow this up. Rob reminded us that within ESIP, there is a ready cluster. Should we interface with that ready cluster and make sure that their aspects of AI ready benefit from the knowledge of FireScore and the startups, or the multidisciplinary things that Guy brought into it, or Shana? Ryan, I know I saw a couple of things. Do you have a couple of comments? I know I promised you a moment or two. And Victoria, I saw you were commenting a little bit on the side. And anyone else, any final comments? But again, I think the next steps are making sure we capture what needs to be done in the coming year. What should we do at the next face-to-face meeting, and maybe some other venues? So any last minute comments? Open up the floor.
Well, everybody, Guy has his hands on. My thought is
you go first.
I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. Enough has been said in this forum, and perhaps leveraging the ESIP's data readiness collaboration could be a starting point, because it is not associated or affiliated with a specific agency or entity, but it brings in all the expertise in-house. Because in the morning meeting with Maggie on trusted data, Dave Jones was talking about working with the emergency managers in their all hazards consortium. So there are networks already existing. If we go with the ESIP's data readiness collaboration, they already have networks that can easily be accessed to address and identify the problems, and also disseminate the solutions that have been mentioned here without creating a new consortium and starting everything from scratch. I would say that would be an easier step to take, immediate next step from my perspective.
Guy, comments, and then maybe I'll ask Alex to make a closing comment, and Claire to make a closing comment.
I've got a very quick comment. I was calling a bit on that during my talk this morning, David. I think if I just put for 1 second my, I think, business hat on, although I'm not, great at that, but I think if we let the word out that data without intelligence is useless. And anybody generating data and just selling data for the fact of selling pixels or images is never going to make a business unless they know how that data feeds into some intelligence that somebody can sell. Now, intelligence is usually the proprietary thing. Data is hardly ever, unless you are defense. I guess that's government defense is a different question. I'm talking more about B2B. Take Google for an example. Without Earth Engine or without advertising or without the flood model alerting that they do, the data they use is not useful for people. So if we get that out, I think a lot of people are starting to free up their data. Because actually the money you're making is on the intelligence of you're getting from that data. Maybe somebody just need to throw out that message, because in the weather community, it works a bit like that. NOAA generates billions of data for free that weather.com or somebody else takes and does a weather app that sells for, however much money. I think we need just to get there. But yeah, that was my kind of comment.
Okay. Claire, any last comments or thoughts based on the things you heard today?
I just want to echo that we have a lot of great resources available within this community, and I think the ability to come together and identify those in a cohesive space is optimal, because that will broaden awareness and allow us to also share and build off of what we've already started as a foundational groundwork. So just really looking forward to the innovations that we're able to build together as a collective.
Thank you. And I'm going to give Alex kind of the last word, both as a startup, thinking about how to launch a business, but also how to provide science to service, data to practice, and where these collaborations may help us move some of these things forward. Alex?
Yeah, thank you, David. Dr. Green. It was a pleasure listening to everyone. My biggest takeaway is, in a world full of mercenaries exploiting artificial intelligence just to make a quick buck, there are rooms of people just like the people in this call, of missionaries, people that have a true purpose to science, to saving lives, communities, livelihoods. So my biggest takeaway from a startup is spending time on the ground, finding those use cases that prove valuable to you, to serve your North Star, whatever that may be, and to be able to spend time with those people on the ground, get the validation you need from whatever model you're able to develop, and then be able to create that impact, that long-standing commitment that you have to whatever your purpose and cause is. And I feel that naturally that in itself will evolve into a meaningful legacy technology, a meaningful legacy company, and our life's work. So it's really a pleasure to listen to everyone on the call, and I look forward to staying in touch. And I wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you, Alex. So I know we're 3 minutes over. I hope it's been good. Everett, I meant to give you a chance for any closing comments as well.
Yeah, thanks, David. I just wanted to say, there's been some discussion about do we need more forums and so forth. And so I encourage people to reach out to me, the good, the bad, and the ugly, about starting up another group here. I don't want to put a lot of effort into something that's not going to be valuable. And I just want to support the end users in the fire community as best we can. So that's all I really had. Thanks, David.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We had a good, I think, opportunity for presentations to get ideas out there. I hope we had the right venue for discussion and dialogue, and the idea that everyone was motivated to action. And the intent now is, and I'm hoping I can follow up with just about everyone, or everyone can follow up with me, and Everett and Alex and Shayna and Marge and everyone here, everyone's intended to move things forward. We don't want to take extra steps, but we want to make meaningful steps. And some of that could be done uniquely face to face. Some of it will remain virtual. But whether it's the ESIP, it sounds like there's a few key opportunities to take some measured steps over the next days, weeks, and months. And then we need to get together as well and figure out what some of those long-term sustainable efforts are, either at the community level, regional level, or global level. So I think we're all dedicated here. We know things have to change. We know the players and the roles are changing. And so I want to thank everyone. It was interesting to try and get everyone here. I can tell you that the head of AI from Department of Interior wanted to be here. Others from USGS, NOAA, NASA, that I discussed and dialogued with over the last few weeks, couldn't make it here because of federal government rules and timelines. But going forward, there is a community who wants to address these issues and get things done and figure out, what do we do more than just a pilot? What do we do more than just a paper? And how do we include the cultures and the societies and the respect that people have for using technology to our shared benefit? So I'll thank everyone. I wish you well on your day, your night, your evening, wherever you are, and take care. And thank you to ESIP staff and leadership for making this opportunity available to us.